Um, technology to deal with here. Oh Lord. Okay. Share. Now see my screen is amazing. Um, just I don't know if everyone's here and I'm recording this. If you are ever absent, like you might be sick on a virtual day. Like I don't expect you to be like keeling over in class. Just try to let me know so I know that once again you're functioning. But I will try to video so you are responsible for what we do even if you are not in class. So that's kind of on you to go back and get all the information. Okay, so just as a reminder, because cohort A, you were kind of doing your thing yesterday while I was with cohort B, but for everyone today, you should have a piece of paper, a writing utensil out. A calculator might be helpful, but you can probably just use your phone, nothing too crazy. I will be checking at the end of the period that you have notes and that you have those wrap-up problems that I am going to be looking at. So um, just as a reminder, you're getting credit for today, so that's great, but I do need to see that you do something. So usually in class, I can kind of peek in on you, but when we are at home, I'm going to check in. So please write this down somewhere. Have it handy. Whether it's your notebook, piece of paper, I don't really care. But I will be checking this. So at the end of the period, I'll either ask you, would you like to throw your screen on and just show it to me, or you can email it to me. So some people's technology is a little finicky when you have a camera and on if you're on a computer. So, so today we're going to talk about point slope form. I think this is the most useful form, I'm going to be honest. People really like that y equals mx plus b slope intercept. Like it's okay, but it's not my favorite. So point slope I find to be the most useful because you can kind of use it with no matter what information you're given. Slope intercept, you need a slope and y-intercept. Standard form is kind of the form that's a pain in the butt. I like this one. It's easy to plug into good stuff. So the first thing we need to know is what is the actual form. So the form of the line is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. So that's the form that we're going to be plugging into. So I'll give you a second to write that down. Okay, so when we look at a form, we need to know what the heck is what do those things mean? Because we have a y and we have a y1, and what's the difference? So your x1 and your y1 come from a point. So x1, comma y1 is a point. We talked yesterday, or on Monday here in cohort A, that m is the slope. When I write the actual equation, just the regular x and the regular y stay as x and y. Because when we write an equation, we want those to stay as variables, so then we can either plug into it or find something from it, and all that fun stuff. So regular y, regular x stay. X1 and y1 become or come from a point, and then m is the slope. So we'll start basic, work our way up. These aren't going to be too crazy today, but I always like this form because it's kind of just quick to plug into, and then we'll go from there. So if I said write the equation in point slope form, sorry, it takes me a second to write here, and point slope, but I like to write my directions so you kind of know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give some different information and we'll just see how to write it. So let's start with the most basic information. The most basic information is if I give you a point and a slope. Okay, that makes sense. Point slope form, point and slope. So I'm just going to plug in. Remember, this is going to be x1 and y1. This is going to be m. It's just making sure things go in the right spot. So it would be y minus y1 is 6 equals m is 3, and then x minus x1 is 2. And that's what your equation would look like. So that's your answer. I feel like people want to get y by itself. You don't have to. So please don't like start rearranging. Don't start doing like other funky stuff. Literally, that's the equation and you're done. So I kind of like it because it's not, you don't have to do anything fancy. Once again, a point is your x1 and y1. The slope is your m. When you see those in the equation, you just plug them in. That would be my answer for number one. So number two, similar. I want to make sure my there we go. So two, let's say I have the point 7, -3 with a slope of 1/4. Sorry for that awkward dot there. I'm about right in the middle. But remember, it doesn't matter if my slope is a fraction because you just kind of throw it in and then you don't really need to do much with it. So I'm going to remind myself x1 and y1. M is 1/4. Sorry for the random dot. That is not a negative. It's just a 1/4. So we're going to plug in. So y, just be careful because it's minus -3. So you would want to make sure when you are plugging in negative, you realize it does become a positive. So that would actually be +3. So please don't in the final answer ever write minus and negative. I do expect to see it as a plus. So just as a heads up. So then that would equal m, which is 1/4, and then x minus x1, which is 7, and that will be your final answer. Okay, so we're saying, wait a second, that's not too bad. It's just really fucking 7. So those are kind of the most basic. If it's called a point slope form, and you have a point and a slope, and you just plug it in. Okay? But sometimes we might be given different information. So let's say I said, hey, can you write an equation in point slope form, except this time I'm going to give you 2 points. So we have 2 points now. So a little bit of a different original information. So at this point, you'd say, well, what do I need? I need a point, and I actually have 2 of those, so I can pick either one. But I need the slope. So I am going to have to find the slope in this case using the slope formula. So that's why with cohort B, we kind of went over that yesterday, and cohort A, you guys did that at the beginning of the week. But I'm going to use my slope formula as the first thing. So my slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to simplify that to be 4 over 2. So my slope ends up just being the simplified 2. Okay, so that wasn't bad. And technically, if I ask you to write it in point slope, you can choose either point. I always just out of habit pick the first one. It doesn't matter though. So technically, I could get 2 equations from this. You only have to write one. So with the first point, it would be y minus 11 equals 2 parentheses x minus 2. So once again, I'm choosing that as my x1 and y1, and then that is my slope. Or you could do the second point, so it's just preference. Y minus 15 equals 2 parentheses x minus 4. You do not have to write both. So I just wrote them as both just in case some people chose one and some people choose the other. But you can choose either one. All right, let's do one more. So let's say, same idea. I'm going to give you 2 points. -6, -4. We'll make this -3, comma, negative mood today. I don't know. I'm trying to make it sound easy. 7. Okay. So now, I mean, I can't really make these too crazy. It's really just different points. So in this case, 2 points, you would have to find the slope. So the slope is going to be y2 minus y1. So just be careful. You can either write the double negative or the plus, but you do need to know that that is going to turn to addition. Over x2 minus x1. So same thing. I'm going to turn those both to addition. Right? Because if you subtract the negative, the opposite of a negative is a positive. So -7 plus 4 is -3. -3 plus 6 is 3. So my slope is going to be -1. And we have all the information that we need now because we have a point. We actually have 2, so you can pick one. And you have the slope, so we're going to throw that into our point slope form. I'm going to use the first point to start. So once again, it will be y. Since it's minus negative, I'm just going to write +6. So you don't always have to write minus negative. You can do that in your head and write the plus. And that's going to equal m, which is -1. And then x. I totally messed that up. Oh my god, this is true, man. This should be +4, you nutbag. All right, sorry about that, guys. It should be y plus 4. I'm sorry if I just confused you. I put an x in for a y. I'm sorry. I knew I made a mistake because I saw that this was going to be 6. Or you could write it with the other points, and it would be y plus 7 equals negative 1 x plus 3. You don't need to write both. I'm just writing both just to show you that there are two options. Either of them would give you credit. So I'm just going to take a break for a second if you're still writing. Just take a second. Don't get messed up by just me being crazy. And I'll go from there. So there's a few other little things I want to show you. So once again, we actually don't have that many more notes. It really is just getting used to, okay, if it says point slope form, you do need to know it. So I know today's the first day. We'll start getting used to it over the next few days and after vacation. So you will need to know that form. And then just knowing what goes where in the form. And once again, most of the time you can kind of figure out a point and a slope. That's why I like this form. And you don't have to worry about doing too much extra other work. So the other thing, we'll look at kind of two more quick things. So in the same category of kind of just getting used to this problem or that form, I'm going to give you an equation in point slope form, and I'm going to ask you what is the slope and what is a point on that line. But I'm just going to maybe so I'm just going to say what is a point. Okay. All right, what number am I on? I'm trying to number in order. It doesn't really matter. I'm just more so I don't lose my mind here. So I'm going to give you an equation. And I'm going to say I want you to label two things. I want you to label what is the slope and then what is a point. So kind of working backwards. We're going to need this when we graph, which we're going to do in a second. We're just going to do some quick sketches. But you need to be able to look at a form, understand, hey, that's point slope form. That looks familiar to me. And then realize, hey, from that, I want to get this information so then I can do some other stuff with it. So the slope is always easy. It's in the same spot. So at this point, I just look here and that's my m. So my slope is 1/3. All right, that was pretty easy to do. Just be careful with your point. So remember in the original equation, it's y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. So the minus comes from the equation. And we saw when we plugged a negative in, it actually made it a plus. So I always kind of think when I'm looking at the actual equation, my point is actually the opposite sign, right? Because once again, if I plug in a negative, it turns to a positive. If I plug in a positive, there's a minus there. So that's a little, not necessarily tricky, you just have to remember the equation. So in this case, if I were trying to identify the point, it's y minus y1, right? But we know to make that a plus, it was x. I just said y, I meant x, I'm sorry. So technically, when I plugged it in, it was x minus -5, and that's what turned it plus. So my actual x1 is -5. And then to find my y, that minus, excuse me, came from the equation, not from me plugging in the minus. So in that case, the y1 I actually plugged in was 3. Just as a heads up. So I always kind of remind myself when I look at it, just think of the opposite sign. So the opposite of that's -5, the opposite of that's +3, and that's what I would have plugged in originally. If the negatives come from the equation. So let's try one more of those. Page here. So I want to label two things, a slope and a point. Slope is always easy. It's always in the same spot. You're just going to find it. Slope is 3. Okay, that was pretty nice. The x one, I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's next to the x. So you look here and remember opposite sign. So that says -4. My x is +4 because the minus came from the equation. And then for the y, kind of makes sense. It's next to y. It would be -16 because once again, to turn that original minus into a positive, that means I have to plug in a negative. So that would be the point on check that one. I'll give you a second for that. Oh, Lordy. Okay, my calculator on it, so hold it there. So just give me a second. I know it's hard depending on where you're working to maybe keep up. So I always want to give you a few to just make sure you have time to write. By the way, I do not know how you guys do remote learning all day. I was like dead yesterday. When you just sit in the same spot all day. Oh. Today I have hall duty next, which obviously I don't need to go watch anyone in the hall. I'm like getting up and moving around. Ugh. Sounds like the hand. You guys should be happy you don't have any first period. My kids' first period, 'cause they went to daycare, but they don't go to like the in the matter of like 10 minutes, my son had like two screaming um, temper tantrums. He's two, terrible twos, you know. He broke. We have like a window lights. He broke that, so glass shattered everywhere. And my daughter, I don't know what she was doing, but she put chapstick just all over her face. So I think I scared my first period class from having kids, which don't have kids. Wait a little bit. That kids, they're super fun, other than when you have to actually work when they're around. So be happy I don't have your first period. It was kind of a disaster. But they've left me for the day. We'll pick them up later. All right. So there's just one more thing I want to do with you. So that's not that bad. I know it's not the optimal way, but we'll just that's what we got at this point. So the last thing I want to do is we're just going to do a few quick sketches of equations in point slope form. So once again, in your notebook, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to do it too. I just have a regular piece of paper. So I'm just going to do like a quick sketch. I'll just draw an axis and draw like little tick marks. So we'll do our best with what we got at this point. And then after I've done maybe just two problems, I'm going to give you some wrap up and I'll tell you how how I'll kind of check you off after that. And then after that, that's it for the day. Yeah, I'm making some longer. What number am I on? Seven. The numbers don't really matter. It's just for me to keep my brain in order. Okay, so we are going to graph these. Once again, sketches are fine. Oh, I was just looking at the chat. A few people had to step away. Thank you for letting me. So when I'm graphing, I'm going to give you an equation. Y minus 3 equals 1/2 x plus 4. So I'm going to say we want to graph it. So I'm just going to do like a quick little, okay, I'm not going to do anything too fancy, but I need an axis so I see where my origin is and where my points will go. So before I start to graph, I'm going to label everything. And that's the biggest thing in this chapter. Like what form do I have? What information do I know? Label it, and then you can kind of work off of that. So I look and I say point slope form. I know two things. I know the slope and I know a point. And that's the two things that I need. My slope is 1/2. And was always in the same spot. My point, just be careful that you have the right sign. So my x, so since it was plus 4, remember that was originally minus -4, so my x is -4. And my y is just going to be 3. So remember that minus came from the equation, not from what I plugged in. Okay, so now I have this information. When you are graphing, you always start with the point. You never start with a slope, okay? You need a point in order to do the slope off of. So I'm going to go to the point -4, 3. So once again, I'm just doing like a quick little -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to be about right here. So not perfect by any means, but you get the idea. From this point, now I do the slope. Never, some people like to go back to the origin. Don't do that. No. Origin is just there to do the point from. So I have this point. This is where I'm doing the slope from. I'm going to rise 1, run 2, because that's what slope is when we're graphing, rise over run. So I'm just going to making sure I kind of have spot for stuff. Okay. So from here, I'm going to rise 1, run 2, and I'm going to make a new point. You can technically kind of keep going. You can keep rising 1 and running 2, however long you like. You could also go down 1 to the left too to kind of extend it. I'm just going to use these 2 points because we're just getting the idea down today. Remember, lines are infinite. There should be arrows on the end, but that would be the general idea of what your graph will look like. So just as a heads up there. Let's try another one. We'll do y plus 2. I'm not going to put any huge numbers just so we can do nice graphs here. And that's going to equal, let's make it -4x plus 1. So I know I'm going to need a graph, so I'm just going to do kind of a quick sketch of an axis here, or axes, I should say. Okay, I'm a labeler, so I like to label. It tends I tend to rush through things, and if I don't label, it's just like turns out being a hot mess. So I'm going to label what's my slope. Okay, that's -4. I always make that a fraction, right? I'm going to need rise over run. That just reminds me what I need. I got a point. My point in this case, the x is going to be -1, and the y is going to be -2. Okay, okay. Let's do our point. -1, -2 is my original points that I need. That's my starting point. And then just remind you how to do slope. Just be careful with negatives. People tend to go a little crazy and they want to give a negative to everything. Only the numerator, only the rise has the negative. The run is positive. Because if we made both of those negatives, it would technically turn into a positive and then it would not make sense. So from here, I'm just kind of making little tick marks for myself. I have to go down 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right one. I'm just going to use 2 points. Works for me. Lines are infinite, so you kind of extend them a little bit, put your arrows on the end. If you want to do a few more points, go for it, but you really only need 2 to get a line. And that's what it should look like. One thing I am going to ask you, as you're graphing, just make sure like your slope makes sense. If your slope is positive, like here, it looks like when you read it from left to right, it looks like it's rising or increasing, and that makes sense because it's positive. If your slope is negative, like in this case, it should look like it's decreasing or going down. So please just make sure your graph kind of makes sense for what your slope is. So that's the main stuff I wanted to show you today. So I am going to give you some wrap up problems that you are trying now. You are not logging off. So you're going to try them. When you are done, you are going to write in the chat, I'm done. Okay, so that kind of tells me you're ready for me to check you off. This is kind of just how I'll do attendance too, I guess, because if you have all your stuff, you are here. Um, so you will write, I'm done, or just give me a heads up that you're all set. I will just go in order from when people comment. I will say your name, okay, whatever it is. Are you going to show it to me now? Which means you're just going to turn your camera on and like you don't need to be in it. I don't have to see you guys, but you can just kind of hold your work up. Just make sure I can actually see it. So like if you hold your work up like this, I have no clue what's going on. You have to kind of like put it up so I can see what's going on. So you're more than welcome to do that. Or if maybe like your camera's not working, if you're using a computer or I don't know, something else, you have the option to email it to me. So maybe if you wanted to use your phone to scan it, you can email it. You can tell me that, but I do expect to get the email before you log off of the Meet. So you should be doing that right away. So one thing I noticed is sometimes you're like, yeah, I'll do that, and you forget, or you're gonna do it later, and you get all distracted. So I do expect to receive your work before you log off of today's Meet. So just as a heads up about that. We still have 20 minutes left, so it might not take you 20 minutes. I like to give people just a little bit of time because people work at different paces. Once I say you're all set, you're good, you can log off. But I will be here till the end of the period, so you can always stay on and ask me questions or log back in and ask me questions. So I get the fun joy of sitting here until 11:01, and I get to go to holiday, you guys. Okay, just me wandering around my house, so I don't take a nap today, hopefully. So, oh yeah, what's up? Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, so it's gonna be like maybe one ish of each type of problem. Okay. Yeah, so nothing crazy. All right, so I'm gonna write the problems out. You'll kind of see me writing as you're going, so you can start them. And then once you're done, once again, just comment in the chat, and I'll just go in the order that people comment. I'll check in on you. Once I have you checked off, I will tell you you're good, so you can sign off. But once again, I'll be here till 11:01. So if you need anything from me, you let me know. Just as a heads up slash reminder, um, we're halfway through the term on Monday, which is crazy. I feel like term one just ended, which means technically we call that time progress reports. Your grade will be updated today. So please look at it. Just make sure everything is good on my end. I tend to make mistakes sometimes. I'm going to be honest with you. So just check it. If you see any mistakes, just let me know, and I'll be happy to fix it for you. But I just wanted to let you know about that because your parents will probably get like an email or an all call, like it's progress reports today. And you're like, what the heck is that? It just means your grade's updated. So just make sure it's correct. Okay, so here are your wrap up problems. Um, so I'm going to start with saying write an equation in point slope form. Sorry, I want to write the directions so you actually know what's going on. So number one will just be 7/9. That's a beauty. Number two, same directions, but I'm going to say 1, 5, 6. Sorry if my hand is in the way. I'm doing my best to kind of write in what you see at the same time. Oops. Open. Okay, one more thing. Okay, so there are your problems. So that's what you're working on now. If you have questions, feel free to let me know. But in, I don't know, I'll give you a few minutes. And once people start kind of commenting that they're done, when you hear your name, you are gonna let me know how you're going to show me your work. Showing here. If you have questions, let me know. Okay, just give me 1 second. I just need to set up so I can actually see everyone. I'm just going to give you 1 more minute with those problems. So if you don't have them all written down, can you write them? It's just I can't see everyone while I'm presenting, so that obviously poses an issue as I'm trying to check your work off. So if you could please write the problems down. If you do not have them yet, I'll give you another minute. just so I can actually start checking people, but I can't check until I can actually see the screen. That's my issue. I'm sorry if you're done. You just have to wait. I'm just gonna make it a little smaller. Let's do that. Is anyone still me those? I'm gonna take that as no. Okay. Take a picture if you need to, or write them down quick. Sorry, it's just I can't see everyone while it's condensing, so that poses a challenge. I'll do that for about 20 more seconds. Oops, why not? Hold on, I'm trying to. Where did that go? There it is. All right, I'm going to X this out. I'm just going to stop presenting more.